real talk now, okay? The ladies, can you excuse us for a second? Come here, man. No one is ever gonna take away your porn. No one's ever gonna take away our male power fantasies. Big badass muscle dudes and badass power armor killing countless people and having sex with scantily clad women. No one is ever gonna take away those games with the ridiculously sexy and non-functional female armor designs that we Google at and look at their ass. Many men love this. And guess what? Many women like these too. And as long as they sell, they will always exist. So calm the fuck down.
Dead or Alive Extreme 3 is available for pre-order at PlayAsia.com, PlayAsia.com, and PlayAsia.com. Thanks to gaming messiahs like Angry Joe, consumers have a wide range of retailers to choose from. New features offered in Dead or Alive Extreme 3 include gambling, pole dancing, and thong bikinis. Pre-order a copy now for the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation Vita. Either way,
Click that link, you fucking degenerate!
buy Dead or Alive Extreme 3 or whatever else you fancy. Link in the description.
So there's been a bit of a delay from when this debacle surrounding Nintendo of America slicing and dicing the Western release of Fire Emblem's Fates, a 3DS game that I imagine most of you, like me, don't care much about. But obviously, the reason I'm going to do this commentary despite the time that's passed is obviously because our problem is with the principle of censoring art and this trend in gaming to hush up anyone taking issue with hacky, ideologically driven lunatics turning gaming as an industry into an artistically beige swampland. In all honesty, you couldn't find a better example of lunatics fucking up than this game. Because the minute you scratch the surface of this controversy, you'll learn that Nintendo of America has no idea what they're doing. However, misinformation and obfuscation handed out by the press generated this entire controversy. For the sake of keeping this portion of the video short, all of this snowballed with an article put out by Jed Whittaker from Destructoid. Dozens of other journos used his absurd, baiting notions of gay conversion therapy, among the other things he mentioned, to piggyback off of, and whipped the entire journo social circle into a fucking frenzy. Rather than focus on the existing allegations of the localization team doing a total fucking hatchet job on the game, the press chased their own tails and fell into a textbook case of a feedback loop. This is yet another failure by just about every gaming publication out there to accurately report a story and just ask a publisher legitimate questions regarding incompetent developers botching localization. Leading the pack of the dumb fucking journos in chasing their tails was IGN, who not only reported false information without hesitation, but also backed up any and all censorship on the part of the localization team, despite not even knowing what was being cut. That's correct, the journalists, I'm actually doing finger quotes at this point, regurgitated misinformation, never followed up to accurately report the story, and openly called for censorship in gaming. Full stop. No equivocation. I said during the live stream that I did the other day on the UN that this is IGN making it crystal clear that they have a bias. This is just another example of an echo chamber IGN panel, but in this case, it was 3 censors sitting around equivocating and eventually vocally defending censorship in gaming. The reason why this is such an issue is that this is IGN, a press outlet. The same principles that apply to a free press should also apply to artistic expression, but when you're a Bay Area moralist, all of a sudden, liberal principles stop applying to things that you personally find immoral.
All right, next topic is the Fire Emblem Fates non-traversy, and I'm calling it that because it is, in fact, a non-traversy, but I feel we should talk about it because there are a lot of passionate fans, Nintendo fans in the world, and I feel that we've been asked, what do you think of this? So, in case you haven't been keeping up, in Fire Emblem Fates, a scene was removed that was considered to some degree controversial. Game localization is the process of taking a product from one territory and adapting it so it does well in another territory. That's just what they do. They also removed the face-touching petting minigame as well. That's gone for the same reasons. The culturally, overall, like, that would not be a cool thing here at the end of the day. Why do
Whereas
you
in
laugh?
Japan, when you're walking around, you just touch around people's faces. It's totally fine.
Well, people don't touch each other, but that's a whole other topic. To go into a few details on the scene itself that was removed, there is a female character who is attracted to other women, but she can't keep her composure around them. It is a popular Japanese trope that when someone is attracted to someone else, or the opposite sex in some cases, whoever they're attracted to, they can't really keep it together. And so there is a quest line, there's a conversation where a magic powder is used in her drink so that she basically sees all the genders inverted. So she doesn't feel strange around women anymore because they look like men.
Which is already kind of creepy in American society. When somebody puts something in your drink, it is never a good thing.
No, never at all.
Secretly so.
And it is.
Can we please find someone for this panel that isn't a full-blown white knighting pussy? Does IGN hire anyone that isn't a bona fide beta, or is that like an actual prerequisite for the job? And I don't want to make this commentary excessively long, but why does this overcompensating, Homer Simpson-looking needle dick strike me as familiar?
When purchasing most major video games in a store, chances are I will not be asked if, or assumed to be, buying it for a wife, daughter, or girlfriend.
Right. He's one of the 25 faggots that Jonathan McIntosh featured in a video that I don't even want to mention. For those of you that even care, here's my rebuttal to that video. Here's a razor that I found online on Amazon for just over $10. For the love of God, the lot of you, please shave your fucking disgusting patchy peach fuzz.
It comes off in an unsettling way as something like gay conversion therapy, which is not cool.
Totally.
Yeah, that's not okay.
Which is a hoax.
Yes. So this seems like it's out for good reasons.
So rather than run into the weeds of this issue, which requires a dense explanation of this game, suffice to say that this whole issue of gay conversion therapy is being wildly misinterpreted. The character in question, as far as I can tell, is not even a lesbian. I've seen multiple posts at this point claiming that this character's sexuality is being assumed maliciously to drum up controversy. In fact, Jed Whittaker, who I've covered on my channel before and I've already mentioned, if you know anything about him, you'll realize pretty quick that he is fucking nuts. And this was one of the original bloggers that misrepresented the entire issue. The other gaming press outlets just ran with the narrative. So rather than continue on with this bullshit, I'm just dismissing this entire issue as clickbait by journos.
And yet there is some outcry of censorship for you kids. This is self-censorship because Nintendo is ultimately doing this themselves. They're not being asked by anyone to change this.
Yeah.
Right.
This is a decision
There's
they
no
made
petition
internally.
or anything going on.
Yeah,
that I'm
the
aware
U.S.
of.
Obama didn't send a letter and said the face touching, it's got to go. That didn't happen. All right.
Right. No one is calling for censorship. Just remember that, kids. No one is pushing an ideology. When we introduced this topic and couldn't even manage to hide our bias for 5 fucking seconds before apologizing for censorship, no one was calling for this to happen. When we all agreed that this content should be cut within 15 seconds of just mentioning the game and called utterly mundane content controversial, creepy, not okay, and gross, we were being completely objective. I can confirm that there's no echo chamber at the San Francisco office of IGN. These people all just coincidentally share the exact same worldview and ethnocentric moralist attitude. Purely a coincidence, I assure you.
That wasn't the case.
It's pretty good.
Could you imagine
Obama?
that guy's list of things to deal with? He would bump everything off the list to do that.
The face touching.
But I think some folks are really like bent out of shape about this, and I can get why. Like I'm not here to judge.
Fans,
we're not here to judge.
But fans, we spoke with Megan earlier. Like fans of anime who are very much used to kind of like the quirkiness and the strangeness, and sometimes the kind of effed upness of Japanese topics and themes. They're they want to see Japanese culture and content at its fullest.
Yeah.
And so the removal to them is scary, right? Because that's where you end up with replacement of something that someone who understands Japanese culture understood, but you're removing it and, in quotes, dumbing it down.
If by dumbing down, you mean altering art to avoid offending the Bay Area moralists that will not play this fucking game, regardless of what is censored. I just love the poetics here. All three of these cunts are just bending over backwards to avoid describing this as cutting content to appease them. Not this mysterious unknown demographic. It's for the sake of ideologues. And it just so happens that these ideologues work for the largest gaming publication in the industry.
Now, I'm not on that side. Like, I felt the face touching thing was weird, right? Like, when I played it, it seemed like cloyingly, awkwardly, like this is the closest you come to sex in this game. Kind of like it was. It was
very suggestive to a degree.
It was very suggestive.
Really weird. Yeah.
But at the same time, when I hear like it was removed, I was like, oh man, I'm kind of bummed out because the animations were so good. When the characters talk, like they did such a nice job with the,
You are very up close with the other character for context.
But
like they're right up
very
in your screen.
beautifully rendered faces and reactions
that game
and
has a
voice
great art style.
acting.
Yeah,
and so
you're
like
right.
my immediate question is like, oh, if that's gone, does that mean like that aspect of relationship building is gone? No, that's still in.
That's
right?
still in. So you can invite people to the place where the face touching happened. Doesn't happen anymore.
The weird
to your
sentence.
treehouse.
But instead, the benefits of that still exist in the game. So support conversations can still be triggered.
But is it interactive or is it just like you invite them and boom, you get the bonus?
I think you invite them and it's the bonus.
You're not cleaning their
cleaning
their like magic lamp.
So Nintendo hosted an RPG event that was pretty cool. We got hands-on with Fire Emblem Fates.
Yeah.
We didn't get to test it out, but we asked, and that we were told the benefits were so that they just didn't detail how.
Yeah.
But it does not affect how this game is going to play. Ultimately, they still capture a lot of what the core game is.
Just listen to the apologetics. It's absolutely amazing. They are all on the same page and don't even need a script. But let's just remember that this is IGN, the gaming press, giving a full-throated defense for cutting content in a game because it's morally offensive to a bunch of dickless wonders living in San Francisco.
It's an awesome Fire Emblem. Even if it is split into 3 pieces, I find each one kind of fascinating because it's like, okay, well, what happens on this chapter? And what's the difference? And who am I going to see? Like these gut-wrenching decisions where if I don't lose a character to death and permadeath, I might lose a character just because I picked the Hoshido instead of the Noor.
Right.
That
happens.
As you grow attached to some of these characters, that's gut-wrenching. Like that, I think this is a really smart direction for this game to take.
Yes, and so that's where, talking about the face touching thing again, it's like, it was one of those moments where you're up close and personal with another character, and so, I hope there is some sort of proxy for that there is something where you can still see the beautiful face animations and kind of get a sense for who the characters are. And to be fair, there was no skill involved there, right? Like you had to find the right spot on their forehead or their necklace or wherever to rub in order to build the relationship. Yeah. It was not skill based. Like anyone could do it. It was kind of silly.
I mean, it was like half the puzzles in something like Hotel Dusk or something, where you rotate an object, look for a glimmering light, tap it, and
but not even that. It was like the simplest interaction possible. So I'm not sad that's gone. But
why? You haven't actually given a reason, none of you, for why you support cutting this content from the game other than your ideology, your bias, and that, quote, suggestive content should be outright removed from games regardless of it being fantastic art, which this old cunt pretended to give a shit about just as a primer for excusing its absence seconds later. I'd call this whole thing rehearsed if I didn't already know what an echo chamber looks like. This is ideological hegemony in action. All of you literally share the same worldview. This whole thing, this panel, is stranger than anything coming out of Japan.
But I want to make sure that they have something that kind of replaces that relationship building in a meaningful way. Or at least
still gives you the benefits of the conversations that happen afterwards, because the affinity between characters is very important to Fire Emblem.
And what the character says in that scene was not deep or moving in any way. They were more like surprised that you're touching their face and stuff. You know, it's like where anyone would be. Now, for the gay conversion scene, it's not going to play in the U.S.
Not at all.
Right? Like, or Europe. And, you know, I used to watch a lot of Japanese TV shows, and Japan's attitudes, granted this was in the 90s, but Japan's attitudes towards homosexuality were very different. Granted this was in the 90s.
The issue is whether men and women who can and have served with real distinction should be excluded from military service solely on the basis of their status.
To the sanctity of marriage, or to the fundamental bedrock principle that it exists between a man and a woman going back into the mists of history.
Decisions that have to be made. I just believe in the unique status of marriage between man and woman, and I know that we have a respectful disagreement on that issue.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that marriage is the union between a man and a woman. Now, for me as a Christian,
Now, when Colin Powell sold me on Don't Pass, Don't Tell, here is what he said it would be.
Because New York made a powerful statement, not just for the people of New York, but the people all across this nation. We reached a new level of social justice this evening.
At a certain point, I've just concluded that for me personally, it is important for me to go ahead and affirm that I think same-sex couples should be able to get married.
A tender and sensitive topic, as are many social issues, but I have the same view that I've had since running for office.
I will never forget the young Tunisian who asked me after the revolution in his country how America could teach his new democracy to protect the rights of its LGBT citizens.
So this is something that I could actually get legitimately angry about, and justifiably so, because this is literal bigotry. This is actual bigotry coming from the mouths of these Bay Area cunts. The majority of Japanese people support gay marriage. You ignorant fuck. Stop talking shit, because while you're putting America on a fucking pedestal, you're conveniently forgetting that gay marriage became legal nationwide in the U.S. less than a fucking year ago in a fucking Supreme Court ruling. We didn't all unite 100 years ago and pass this through Congress. It was the result of case law from fucking last summer. Stop shitting on the Japanese when what you are saying is just as true for us here in the United States.
It had a lot of jokes, you know? It was kind of like like famous talk show hosts like Beat Takeshi, like the guy you've seen in movies like Sonatina, like he plays Yakuza a lot, right? Like he'd be dressing up as a gay guy and like prancing around in a dress and going like, oh, you know, and like you did that in the US, people would be like, what the F is going on? Whereas in Japan, at least at the time, was still, not that it's the right thing, but it's just so normal to see that kind of over-the-top craziness in theater and television.
It's also wrong. Like you are basically making fun of, a culture or a subsect of people, which at the end of the day, like that's not cool. I'm not here to judge. We're not here to judge.
Exactly. And so I think
where they come from.
But there have been changes in Japanese society where that has changed as well. And I talked about this before, right? Like when I lived there were signs on some bars saying no foreigners, right? Like imagine that happened here in Japan. It wasn't a big deal for a long time, and it has become a bigger deal now, right? And I think Japanese society is changing, and so sometimes you will encounter something that is not meant as art. This is not an expression, and it's not teaching you a story saying, hey, this is wrong or right. It's just, it's a little thoughtless, and it's not detected when it's put in those games because those societies are different, and like you have to change the games.
Art doesn't require your approval, you fucking fascist. What an admission. What a fucking thing to say.
Right.
Yeah. No,
Because,
that's what
you know-
localization is. And if you're up in arms about this, like, no offense, but this song ain't about you. Like, there's more to this story than just your interests. And it may be coming from a passionate place. You just want to be more involved and play the game as it was intended. You love Japanese culture. You love certain things about it. And you think that's fine. But I'm sorry. This is not just about you. I'm not here to judge.
Fans,
We're not here to judge.
Fans.
Also, like, if you're upset about this, take the time that you would have spent writing a really angry letter or message board post to learn Japanese and import the original version of the game and play the homophobic thing you've loved to play.
Said the ethnocentric American. I mean, really, guys, we could play this game all day. You slander Japan and Japanese artists as homophobic, and those of us that are not in your echo chamber can see you as ideologues that are demonstrably wrong. You created a false story, total fucking clickbait, to demonize a foreign country as homophobic. Or is it that you aren't ignorant to this being a bullshit story, and you're just using this as an excuse to justify censorship in general? Because that's my takeaway from this. I don't think anyone on this panel really cares about this horseshit being true or not. I think you found a target to hammer and are doing so to be morally superior to others. And let's pretend for a moment that there actually is homophobic content in a game. There's a game that preaches how awesome straightness is and how immoral homosexuality is. That sounds like a boring game that I wouldn't play. But I'd like to have that choice. I'd like to have the choice of what kinds of games that I'm able to play, but IGN's attempt at daytime television is here to apologize for censoring content they find immoral. I don't need an old man, his sidekick beta boy, and a compensating Homer Simpson wannabe to tell me what kind of art that I'm allowed to enjoy. If only I could be an ideologically driven hack and an ignorant shit spreading bigotry so that I can get a job at IGN.
Yeah.
Like, there's plenty of uses of your time. Like, import a 3DS. Play that version if that's what you want.
Yeah.
Like, and also, like, I don't really buy the excuse that it's always been like this. Like, I read that a lot in scenarios like this. Like, it's tradition in Japan. Like, tradition at worst is a mistake that someone annualizes.
Yeah,
you know, it's basically just
that's a good way to put it.
It's just doing the same, but it's doing a bad thing over and over. And
it's also not true. I mean, the attitudes towards homosexuality in ancient Japan, like in the Edo period.
We aren't talking about a game from fucking ancient Japan. Here's the fucking data. Japanese people are not supernaturally more homophobic than Americans. Stop bringing up irrelevant bullshit when you are wrong, demonstrably wrong about this.
They were pretty open. If you read classic Japanese literature, I happen to have studied it in Japan. So, like you go back to the days of like the, pillow books, Seishonagon, like Tale of Genji stuff.
Sure.
It's very open. And like, a lot of the lead characters had relationships on with both genders, and it was just kind of matter-of-factly and not ridiculed. And I think things have changed over the years in Japan. So it's not that it's traditional. Japan has changed so many times, and there was this phase, and you can see the remnants of it in modern anime and in games as well. And I guarantee you, like there are people at Nintendo in Japan who like look at that scene in that game and they said, "Yeah, let's not do that again in the next game."
Well,
right?
I mean, it's
just like Disney's looking at Song of the South and says, "It exists. We can't erase that, but if we're going to do another Song of the South, it's not going to be like that."
Yeah.
Right?
And then you could be like, well, why don't you make it racist like the old one? Because we can. But I mean, America's not exempt to this stuff. If you look at,
I can't believe you just said that.
No, it's true.
Keep going.
If you look at something like In Living Color, right, which was the '90s sitcom run by the Wayans brothers, it had those two It's Raining Men characters who were these like pseudo-gay movie reviewers. If you look at a movie like Get Hard, which is a Will Ferrell movie that came out a year and a half ago. It's incredibly homophobic. And I think when they were making it, they were like, it's the 90s and we can get away with this kind of stuff. But the audience reception was like, this is not funny.
Right.
Like these jokes are old, they're boring, and it's not funny. It doesn't work anymore. So I think you still have a lot of that holdover from creators and creative types who try to pull from those old tropes and ideas. And that's not just a Japanese thing. That happens all over the universe. But I think moving past that is okay. And it doesn't mean that people are overly sensitive, which is what I see to everything like that. It just means that it wasn't that great. Like I see the same thing with comedy where people are like, oh, what is that joke offensive? No, it's just not funny.
Yeah.
Make your joke funny and then you can go anywhere with it. Make your story interesting and you can do anything with it.
Yeah, and I would say that if you understand Japanese culture and you're that invested in game concepts like that and you want to experience them, like they're not erased, right? You can find them in the Japanese version. You have to put a little bit more money in it into it to get the Japanese 3DS in this game. I can tell you it's not worth it. None of
especially not now.
The story elements and the gameplay, it's just not good enough for it to be something that we should lament. I get the concept of, hey, let's not censor art is a valid one. But you have to also make a distinction. You can't just, put the label art on everything that is created and attach value to it and say it needs to be preserved. Like, I do think there are nuances.
And there's your mistake. You just admitted to what the principle of the issue is with this. You fucked up, old man. You just let the cat out of the bag after all of that careful apologetics.
There's also Nintendo's selling a product. This is not art. Let's go there.
Looks like Beta Boy made the mistake of admitting to being an ideologue.
Yeah, this is their own thing too.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, to an extent, some of it is. I shouldn't have said that.
No, but I mean, like, let's give the benefit to anybody who's attempting to grow or not self-censor, but to sort of like evolve and change. Like, if you listen to like even IGN podcast 6 years ago, like I know I used to say the R word a lot, like it was nothing. I said it all the time. And then 3 years ago, I made a conscious decision to stop saying it. And I didn't tell you to stop saying it, or you guys don't say it, but I didn't say to the audience, hey, I hate you. Like I used to smoke cigarettes and I quit. I don't walk by smokers going, put that out. I keep to myself.
Are you not from San Francisco? I thought everyone here.
There's a whole lot of judgment in this.
Like I'm from San Francisco. But I think it's okay to grow and it's okay to acknowledge your mistakes and keep moving. And that's like you shouldn't chastise a company for doing that or a person for doing that. Like allow them to have that.
If you want to stop saying retard because you're overcompensating for your censor-happy ideology, that's fine. But don't ask me to do the same. Don't censor art that happens to have the word retard in it. Censoring the word doesn't cure mental retardation. It doesn't change how people treat those with mental disabilities. Plus, this is coming from your perspective. Your moralist attitudes.
You called it a controversy. Like, I wonder how many people actually seriously are offended by the omission or are upset about it. I think it's fewer people than you think.
Well, it's just like the local minority. That's the internet.
It's just more people wrote the story on that. So there was a story recently about the Deadpool movie that's coming out, right? And it's rated R. And mother wrote a story saying,
that one was hilarious.
Yeah, she made a petition saying, I want my son to see this movie, and they should make a PG or PG-13 version of it,
like the comic.
More people publicized that story than actually signed that petition.
Like
there's probably 1,500 articles about that petition, and there's maybe 1,100 people who signed it.
Because it's funny. That's like me saying Quentin Tarantino redo Pulp Fiction because my 4-year-old wants to see it.
Because not everything has to be for everyone, and that's okay. Sure. But I think a lot of the times nowadays we get caught up in the people are mad. What people? 2 people on Twitter? 4 people on Facebook? That's not people. That's just a small group of people. Like, let's not take that and turn this into this massive thing. It's really not.
Yeah,
like, this is not as big as an issue, and that's why I'm totally okay with you calling it a controversy.
And to close this out, if you are offended by this, I just want to say, do not take the time to harass or bother people over this. It's becoming a thing. I think you should just let this one go because at this point, you're not changing anything.
Well, I'm happy to hear opinions about it.
You can always make a case, but don't
email
harass.
us at nvc@ign.com.
Yeah.
We didn't mean to come across it as preachy, but
yes, you did. You're actively judging art and anyone that isn't a censor-happy fascist like the 3 of you.
It's like one of those subjects that crops up once in a while. Where like you just got to realize that there are differences between cultures and it's okay to make adjustments.
Mm-hmm. From a video game journalist, I'm speechless. Show this clip to anyone that tells you how awful and unique Polygon is. Show this to anyone that doubts IGN's stance on censorship, on Gamergate, even on the Gamers Are Dead articles. Where do you think these three stand on annihilating gaming as a subculture? Because it isn't inclusive enough and refuses to suck the cock of corporations like the professionals here at IGN. IGN is just as ideologically driven as Polygon or Kotaku or any of the random journos you happen to come across. All of this is just below the surface at IGN, but it springs out after three people with the exact same worldview talk to one another for long enough.